Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We end today's show by looking at South Sudan, where the United Nations warns an ethnic cleansing campaign carried out by the South Sudanese government is threatening to empty the country. The United Nations has accused soldiers with the government's Sudan People's Liberation Army, known as the SPLA, of killing, torturing, and raping civilians, as well as burning down homes and villages. The violence has caused one of the biggest refugee crises in Africa. More than 1.7 million South Sudanese civilians have already fled to neighboring countries since the civil war erupted in 2013. This is a South Sudanese refugee named Maria Lalam speaking from a refugee camp in Uganda.
I crossed into Uganda at the beginning of this year when government soldiers started attacking us. We just heard gunshots and took to the forest for safety. My children and grandchildren scattered off in different directions, and we were reunited just recently in this camp.
South Sudan is the world's youngest country. The United States backed South Sudan's independence in 2011, and South Sudan's President Salva Kiir, whose troops are now accused of carrying out the majority of crimes in the ongoing war. For more, we're joined by journalist Nick Turse, a reporter with the Investigative Fund, spent 6 weeks reporting from across South Sudan and in refugee camps in neighboring Uganda and the Central African Republic. His new article for Harper's is titled "Ghost Nation, an ethnic cleansing campaign by the government threatens to empty South Sudan." We welcome you to Democracy Now! You just actually were recently in South Sudan. Talk about what's there. This is covered almost not at all in the United States.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get coverage of it here. Thank you for having me on. And I spent about 6 weeks in northern Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and South Sudan interviewing internally displaced persons and refugees. I talked to about 250 people while I was there. It's the fourth time in the last 4 years that I've been covering the civil war there, and it was by far the worst I'd seen it. There's a government ethnic cleansing campaign. It's going on through the southlands of the country, known as the Equatoria region. Government troops will roll into villages in trucks or on foot, say almost nothing, and just begin opening fire. They'll generally kill somewhere between 4 and 10 people, and then also set fire to homes.
Can you give us a little history lesson here? South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, established in 2011. Explain also the U.S. role and what you feel the U.S. responsibility is today. But begin with how it was founded and how it has deteriorated into what it is today.
Sure. South Sudan, or Southern Sudan, I should say, has been more or less at war since the 1950s, with very few respites in between. The last civil war between the Khartoum government in the north of Sudan and the Southerners raged from the early 1980s, 1983 to 2005. And from this, South Sudan was born in, as you said, 2011. You know, the last two secretaries of state, Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, put it indelicately, but there's some truth in it, that the United States midwifed South Sudan into existence. The United States provided a tremendous amount of support, financial assistance, training to the government and to the military that's now carrying out these crimes. In many ways, the United States was the guarantor of South Sudan's independence. But after the nation plunged into a civil war in December of 2013, the U.S. has walked away in many cases. It didn't push for an arms embargo until very late in the Obama administration, until the administration was out of political capital. It never even imposed a unilateral arms embargo under the new Trump.
Why?
Well, you know, there was a lot of support for these leaders in South Sudan, including Salva Kiir, the president, who the United States had fostered. You know, there was a lot of lingering support from the prior civil war. I think there was always the idea that somehow tough talk would convince the government there to change its ways, and over again, it's proved not to be the case. This government doesn't respond to that.
Talk about the rift between the president and the vice president in South Sudan.
Sure. This was the beginnings of the civil war. President Salva Kiir, who's still in power, dismissed his vice president, Riek Machar. Kiir hails from the Dinka people, the largest of South Sudan's ethnic groups. Machar was is from the Nuer. And the civil war really began as an ethnic cleansing campaign in the capital after Machar said that he would challenge Kiir for the presidency in upcoming elections that were never held. Kiir's troops went throughout Juba, the capital, slaughtering civilians and soldiers of the Nuer ethnic group. Since then, the civil war is fractured in many ways, and now its targets are not only the Nuer, but also ethnic minorities in the south of the country, the Acholi people, Madi, Kuku, Kakwa, Azandi, all these other smaller ethnic groups that are being chased from the country.
You begin your piece, Ghost Nation, in Harper's by writing, "In his heart, Simon Yakita knew he was digging his own grave." Tell us who Simon is, what his story is.
Sure. I found Simon Yakita, who's a father of 9, a resident of a village called Bomre in the far south of South Sudan, living under a tree, a large mango tree in Uganda. Most of his village was chased out after a series of killings by the South Sudanese government troops, and they caught Simon on his way out of town. They forced him to dig a grave, which Simon believed would be his own grave, and they took steps to execute him. It was only through happenstance, poor aim, and a gun jam that saved his life. After an argument among soldiers, they allowed him to leave, but Simon Yakita left something in that village, the site of his supposed execution. The man I found was completely shattered, traumatized. I don't think he knew what to do next or where he would go. And it's like this for so many South Sudanese. It's a country whose population has been traumatized.
In South Sudan, refugees fleeing civil war say government soldiers have indiscriminately killed civilians, slitting the throats of adults, running down children with a vehicle, shooting those who tried to flee. Hundreds of survivors recount the violent scenes as they flee towards safety in Uganda. This is one civilian, password Akot.
I had 2 brothers. One of them was arrested by the soldiers and slaughtered for no reason. The other one was trying to flee but was shot dead. I don't even know what to do with their widows and children.
Just one voice. Talk about why you went there. And also, this is becoming the biggest refugee crisis in all of Africa now, with 1.7 million refugees, people trying to leave.
Yes, and in fact, and the number of internally displaced persons is even higher. We're talking about around 4 million people who've now fled their homes. And on top of this, there's a great deal of hunger, and all of it completely man-made or war-made. 6 million people who are severely food insecure, 1.7 million who are on the brink of famine. But this story doesn't get covered very much in the United States, and the United States has, I believe, a special responsibility to South Sudan. So I've felt an imperative to keep going back. It's really the people that bring me back. The South Sudanese deserve so much better, and I think it's important that Americans know exactly what's going on.
What do people tell you needs to happen there?
Well, people in South Sudan are looking for the international community to step up, to put real pressure on the government there. It's always difficult to tell exactly what they want, but generally they'll say, the United States was our benefactor. They're a superpower. We're a very small country. Why isn't the United States doing more? At the very least, I think the United States could, appoint a special envoy. This is something that a bipartisan group in Congress has begged the Trump administration to do. They haven't, so there's no point person even coordinating this for the U.S. government.
And is there any arms embargo in place right now?
Not at the present.
Finally, how would you assess U.S. military action in Africa? You've been reporting on it for years. Has it changed under President Trump? Well,
as we've seen in other contexts around the world, the the military in some ways has been given carte blanche by the Trump administration. We've seen a loosening of restrictions in Somalia, and I think we're seeing a ramp up of the American-backed war there. More U.S. boots on the ground. There was an American Special Operations Forces soldier killed there recently, 2 others injured. I think we're going to see more of that. Of course, there are U.S. forces still on the ground in Libya, troops that are in Western Africa, aiding the fight against Boko Haram. So it's early to see exactly what the Trump administration is doing. I think there isn't a real heavily coordinated policy with Africa. But I think we're going to see a ramp up, more troops on the ground, more bases, and this has been the way that things have been going for years now.
And we just have 15 seconds, but the danger journalists face going to South Sudan, I mean, the people in South Sudan obviously clearly face massive danger.
Definitely. Local journalists face the most difficulties. They're threatened, detained, tortured, even killed, and no one's ever been held responsible. But the crackdowns against foreign journalists have become greater. More and more people are being accused of being spies. I was myself, threatened with jail. NPR's Ida Peralta was accused of the same and actually jailed there. They banned about 20 foreign reporters, people who know the country best. So it's become a difficult environment.
Well, Nick, we're gonna link to your article at Ghost Nation, and that does it for our broadcast. A very happy birthday to Karen Ranucci. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Burke, Dina Guzder, Nermeen Sheikh, Carla Wills. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.